Greetings, brave adventurers, and welcome to Community Day! On Wednesdays, I like to highlight stories from my own community. If you'd like to join in, you can find a link to the FoxyBard Discord server in the video description below. Come for the friends, stay for the foxes. Today's stories are a bit of a mixed bag. We have one that borders on a horror story, though it's not as bad as a lot of others. And we have another one that is honestly just really kind of funny and kind of great. But let's get the horror out of the way first, so we can end on a high note. Our first story tonight comes from the user Low-Key Lion. It involves one player thinking he's the most important at the table, a little bit to the detriment of everyone around him. But let's just jump right in. I am currently running a 5e campaign with a homebrew setting. One of my players asked if she could invite one of her IRL friends. This is where the drama begins. The cast: Mana, our shadow sorcerer; Genevieve, our halfling bard and Mana's best friend; Alexandria, tiefling rogue; Olga, OG player, human rogue; Bird Boy, an Aarakocra monk; and Kermit, the Grung Ranger. Our story starts the session after Bird Boy joins the game. Previously, he and Mana had gone out into the forest to find an owlbear. As he was flying over the woods, he mentioned that owlbears have a definitive screech. First warning. I asked him how he knew this, as he had been sailing most of his life. His response? It's right here in the monster manual. As 3 of the players are DMs in their own games, he was quickly admonished for metagaming. Quick aside, he had told me prior to joining that he had experience with D&D prior, so the metagaming caught me a bit off guard. Bird Boy catches a few arrows in the chest and goes down hard after failing a saving throw, where he is confronted by a very pissed off elf. Mana walks into the woods and begs the elf not to kill him. This grants him a release. However, the elf gives them a warning to return to the local lord, a severed hand with a signet ring. Bird Boy takes the hand, sans ring, and presents it to the local lord, which gets him locked up. Lucky that he has 2 rogues to spring him out. Next session, Bird Boy and the party go off in search of a boat deep in the swamp. They are confronted by an owlbear that knocks Genevieve unconscious. Mana casts Shadow and picks up Genevieve, but no one except Bird Boy has healing potions in their inventory. Instead of doing the big brain move and giving her one, he ends up picking a fight with Mana both in and out of character. Mana and Bird Boy start fighting while Olga and the rest of the party look on. Bird Boy tries to rules lawyer that Mana shouldn't be allowed to roll with advantage, since they are both in darkness. I message Kermit's player to intervene, as there are Grung scouting parties in the area that will be attracted to the noise. At this time, I hear a disconnect and see that Mana has left. I reach out to Mana's player and she is adamant that she will not continue to play with us while Bird Boy was in the party. She cited his rules lawyering and metagaming as 2 of her reasons. I messaged Bird Boy in an attempt to mend bridges, but he stated that he saw nothing wrong with his actions. In fact, since everyone had hit level 4, he wanted to get the alert feat just in case I run into any issues with rogues. This set off warning bells that I was gonna have to get rid of this guy before he tried to kill or steamroll the entire party's choices. I've read enough RPG horror stories to see where this was heading, however. Since Bird Boy and Olga were friends outside of the game, I wanted to do this in a subtle manner. Mistake number 1, just put your foot down. After polling a few people, shout out to the FoxyBard, "Hey, that's me!" Discord, I decided to set up a grung encounter to teach him a lesson about team tactics. The session comes, Bird Boy's player is at work again with tons of background noise, and they go right into combat with 3 green grung, a red, and an orange. The battle ensues and Demon, that's Alexandria, is up first. They fire off a crossbow round and follow it up with a hex. The red grung then comes up and casts Banishment against Bird Boy. He fails the save and gets pushed to an alternate dimension. The rest of the party, sans Mana and Kermit, proceed to deal with the threat. Olga, using her knives, offs one and proceeds to deal damage to the elite grung. Genevieve gets revived by a friendly NPC paladin that I decided to toss in so she supports Demon. Within 4 rounds, the combat is over, and the grung, being outnumbered and outgunned, retreat. Monk, that is Bird Boy, come back from the demiplane and divide up the loot. As the party is taking their long rest, Bird Boy gets upset because Demon refuses to share their alcohol with him. He then attempts to sneak into the tent where Genevieve and the Paladin have bedded down for the night. At this point, I should point out that Genevieve leads all the way into the horny bard stereotype, and the NPC Paladin serves a goddess of love and desire, so yeah, things are happening in that tent. As Bird Boy opens the flap, I have Mana cast her darkness spell, causing the entire area around the tent to go black. I end the session there, and before I can award XP, Bird Boy's player drops from the call and removes his character from the campaign. He messages me later saying that the game just isn't his style. TLDR, one spell during a combat encounter causes a Powergamer to quit because he realizes that he isn't the ultimate power in the universe. Once again, I really do think that this just comes down to a general hesitation in communicating about something. While I do remember the conversation in question from my Discord, I don't know how privy to it I was at the time. I think I was away doing something. Either way, I don't necessarily think that trying to make an example of someone in the middle of the game is the best approach, but, you know, if it worked, which I guess it did. Still, I'm always going to be an advocate for just talking to the person and trying to work out the differences that way. And if you can't, just kick them from the group rather than trying to start a scene. Though I am pretty sympathetic, I understand not wanting to potentially cause a rift between some friends, and it could have gone badly no matter what happened. An interesting game, the only winning move is not to play. Our next story is from the user Yusuf, and I am not going to ruin any of this because it's pretty great, so I'm just gonna let him do his own intro. Spoilers for the Forge of Fury in Tales from the Yawning Portal ahead. So this is the best D&D tale I have to date from the early days of learning how to DM, so don't judge me too harshly. My players were all quite new too, and despite their bad table etiquette, were good people. All of the following events take place on Discord voice chat with Roll20 Tabletop. So the party is as follows: a half-elf bard, a furbolg paladin, a lizard-folk rogue, a human barbarian medic, cleric multiclass, human warlock, and the star of this atrocity, a human monk. The party were all level 3 at this point in the campaign. Due to an onslaught of orc attacks to a mining village north of Mirabar, our party had been hired by an archaeologist looking for evidence of a long-lost dwarven stronghold. Since the orcs had become more aggressive for an unknown reason, he hired adventurers to head north in place of his usual team with promises of riches. The party take out the initial party of orc raiders using the abandoned dwarven settlement as a home and begin to wander in. They proceed with caution after encountering dangerous spores and invisible mud monsters that would ambush them, but their pain had earned them a couple weapons, a small but growing pile of gold, and 2 unexamined potions. The potions were seized by the monk with glee. He had a habit of fighting in odd ways that would often use the random objects he came across to fight, which is, to date, one of the biggest reasons I love new players. In a previous encounter, he had decided to use a random scroll without reading it, and it had ended up with an Etten getting entangled while he rode on his back, a Nat 1 strength saving throw, which had emboldened this playstyle. It didn't bother me and made for interesting games, but some of my players got frustrated because of situations like the following. For the first time in this dungeon, the group were in a truly abandoned part of the dungeon, locked behind a metal door the rogue unlocked. The dust at the entrance and a long, undisturbed magic mouth spell took the players off high alert, and they went exploring. The important rooms for the story were a main throne with a chapel to the north and a kitchen to the south. The bard was more interested in checking out the southern kitchens, and broke off from the bulk of the group. The monk wanted to examine the stone carvings of the main throne room in the center, and the rest opened up the chapel to the north. Unbeknownst to the party, the floor was inhabited by Duergar, Underdark dwarves, and unbeknownst to both the Duergar and the party, the previous dwarven owners of the mountain home had enchanted various objects to attack things that were not dwarf-shaped, and since the Duergar were just pale dwarves, these were, as of yet, untriggered and waiting for anything not dwarf-shaped. The kitchen had just such an enchanted trap, an animated table that to me looked just like a giant goat from the monster manual with extra HP, aka extra damage if the table could get a run-up. Unbeknownst to me, this table was a slumbering demon. The bard wanders in, looking to see if there was a usable knife or any stored food that hadn't spoiled. But before she could examine the pantry, the table moved and she screamed for help. This scream was cut short by a nat 20 on a run-up attack, 4d6 plus 2, plus another 4d6 from the charge. The bard had avoided a one-hit KO by about 3 hit points. The party, hearing this, prepare for battle and roll initiative. Previously unmentioned, mostly due to memories unearthed during writing, the chapel sits on the throne room's northern wall, separated by a double door. The kitchen, however, was down a long 10-foot wide corridor of equal height, around 20 feet long, meaning the entire party, even the rogue, who was as far in the chapel as he could be, were a full round of movement away from the kitchen, with the exception of the monk, who walks in, watches the bard get knocked out in one hit, and retreats down the corridor screaming for help, with the table chasing after him, thirsty for a second taste of victory. With round 1 complete, the table drifted out of the kitchen and chased down the monk as the rest of the party made their way to the other end of the corridor. Monk's turn. He exclaims,
"I throw a potion at it!"
Now, I had almost forgotten about these things. They were towards the start of the previous floor, and there were 2 in his bag. I told him to roll a d2 to select which potion he throws. Well, I look up exactly what they were. The first potion was a potion of water breathing. Not needing to breathe, the table technically had this ability and would gain absolutely no benefit from this. This is not the potion he threw. The other potion was a potion of spider climb, allowing the user to walk up walls for the next hour. As I describe the table legs sprouting hairs, and the players start to put together what this means, the table's turn comes up. The tables have literally turned. Now charging at the bulk of the party across the hallway, it spirals over the monk across the ceiling towards the throne room. It rolls high and knocks out a previously wounded paladin, causing the rogue to use a potion to bring him back up with his turn. The barbarian medic takes an opportunity attack that misses, and makes a beeline to find the bard. His turn ends in the middle of the hallway. The warlock flails, missing every attack on the table, its demonic wall-climbing presence too much to allow her to roll about an 8 to hit. End of round 2. Bard death saving throw, 5. First fail, with 1 success the previous round. Round 3. The monk was first up, determined to redeem himself. He ran past the cleric and held an attack for the table. The rogue takes a few shots at the table that connect, but as I said before, this table can take some knocks. The paladin gets up and whiffs an attack, still dizzy from the initial impact. The warlock hexes the table and proceeds to miss shot after shot. The table goes again, and the paladin gets a reaction attack that once again misses. Spiraling back over the barbarian and medic, the table stops on the ceiling, bucking at him like a sentient flipper trap, making life difficult to cross. Another hit, but the barbarian didn't multi-class to be a squishy boy. He takes the table hit in his stride and pushes forward on his turn into the kitchen. Table reaction strike, nat 20. We need another medic. End of round 3. Bard rolls a 3. 1 more, and it's permanent death. Well, okay, death is never permanent in RPGs, but... Round 4. The monk realizes his strikes are not doing any good, but the barbarian medic always had a healing kit on him, and the table had no more reactions to strike him as he moved. Monk won't be able to bring the bard up to 1 HP like the barbarian medic could, healer feat, but he could stabilize her. So that's what he did. For now, the bard was safe. The warlock and rogue continued to pepper the table from a distance with magic and arrows, finally bloodying Satan's table. It had 1 more spiral in it and looped around, knocking the rogue out with another high hit. This would be its fatal error, as once again, it was in melee range with the paladin, who finally hit and promptly used a divine smite. The table lights up across every possible fault line, glowing with white divine energy before becoming a pile of splinters. The paladin stabilized the rogue and barbarian medic with lay on hands, and they took a short rest to lick their wounds in the chapel. This table became infamous in my groups, to the point playing with any one of those same people became impossible if an adventure involved a kitchen. To their credit, I did end up playing on this on 1 occasion, but can you blame me? I know I could have ruled that potions don't work that way and saved my players a lot of trouble, but it seemed like a cool idea at the time. To be fair, it was. The irony of the situation is that it was 100% avoidable, as these potions were labeled in Dwarvish, a language that the monk knew. Behavior like this eventually broke the party down due to players getting frustrated at careless actions, and if I were running this now, I would politely remind the players how their actions can affect other people. But to this day, I smile when remembering the story of a table more deadly than the final boss. No, seriously, it was a cakewalk compared to this thing. What is it with some D&D groups and tables? My group that I run has the exact same phobia of tables, because one time a table in a dungeon was a mimic, and now every table they come across, they try to stab. And honestly, I'm just living for that level of paranoia. It can be so much fun, both as a player and as a DM. And this whole story was a perfectly ridiculous way to encourage exactly that phobia. I can understand why a lot of members of the group might not be all the way down for those kinds of shenanigans, always. It does suck that they had to break up, but it made for a really good story. Thank you, Yusuf, for sharing with us. And that will do it for today's video. If you liked it, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. And if you'd like to join in on the community, the link to the Discord channel is, again, in the video description. If you don't have Discord and would still like to be included on the community days, that's also totally fine. Leave me a comment with a story, and you very well might be included in the next one. But you need to have adventures before you can have stories. So, let's go ahead and douse the fire and get back to our own adventures. It's right here in the monster manual.